You're listening to Chem Stories, a podcast series created by people with lived experience of P&P chemsex.
Hello, Divas. This is Captain Patrice speaking from the flight deck of Chem Stories Airlines. We're now in the second and final leg of our YHZ Resilience flight. Halifax host Andrew wraps up his conversation with Stephen and James. Our flight plan forecasts discussions on sexual abuse and on support services for chemsex within the Halifax community. Should you experience turbulence while listening to this podcast, please visit our list of resources and services related to P&P chemsex in the episode description and on chemstories.ca. Thank you for choosing Chem Stories Airlines, where the journey is always a trip.
Were there many supports you found out there, either of you here in Halifax, for dealing with that sort of thing?
It wasn't something I'd really processed or thought about reaching out for help for. And by the time I did, I had a really good therapist. So that's been nice. Yeah, I guess some of my story around it, very young, deeply repressed, that from for a few years, there's sexual abuse happening. And I think I repressed it so hard because I was gay in a Christian family, and I thought that it was my behaviors as accepting this abuse that turned me gay, and that's why I was going to hell. So I just did not think about it, never spoke to anybody about it until kind of my early 20s. I was passed out drunk and someone was sucking me, woke up during, and I think before that, probably a year before that happened, I came out as gay. And I remember writing a letter to all my very Christian friends. I loved the Lord. But I remember putting in my letter that I didn't want my life to be reduced to just my sexuality, that this was important to me, but I have so many other important things in my life. And I don't know, having someone take that control away from me to the point where I was reduced to just sex really fucked me up. And I think drugs were a way to contribute to that fucking me up. It was, I am just a sex object now. And when I'm high, all I can think of is sex. All I want is sex. So that's my life. And I that was truly the worst case scenario for me if my life was solely sex. So of course I wanted the worst case scenario and just played that out. And drugs were a big part of that. Because it was just all I could think about on crack was sex, just wanted dicks. Couldn't get hired, but just wanted to have sex a lot. Stupid drugs, terrible. Making you horny and not heard. But yeah, it was just a lot of being reduced to just a sex object, and that was appealing to me because it was something that I knew was hurtful to me. I also repressed that early 20s sexual assault because I didn't want to admit it. I continued hooking up with that guy in the same way for years. And it wasn't until recovery, taking a step away from sex, taking a look at what I want my sex life to look like, what I want my relationship with drugs to look like, that I was able to kind of process both my early childhood trauma and my early 20s trauma. And is I able to process and conquered it? Absolutely not. I don't know what I can do, and I'm still not having sex. My therapist is still pressuring me to have sex. But yeah, it was things kind of clicked after that. I knew my self-worth was shit. I knew self-harm was very appealing. I knew I had multiple suicide attempts within the past year, but nothing made sense to me, and why? And I think self-worth was such a huge part of that. And there's so many things around that contribute to that. But the sexual assault was a big one that was just I was constantly validating that I had nothing else to offer. And so kind of breaking down that repression and actually thinking about it, actually talking about it has been super helpful in ways. Yeah.
I think it's with chemsex too, it's this really confusing intersection of, especially when you start recovery, let's say, and you relapse and everybody's furious at you for relapsing. How do you then tell them, like, oh, I also, during my relapse, experienced some sexual assault? And because I think to the outside person, that should be an automatic reason. Like, I think it's just so hard for somebody that doesn't live with addiction to comprehend, why would you go back to, you were violated to such a degree, yet you're returning to using. Like, and I get it, that must be such a confusing thing to process, and everybody's so angry at you in the moment that you don't want to also be like, by the way, this happened too, or they ask, well, why do you do it? And and then you point to things from your childhood, or it eventually just sounds like cliche or a broken record, or you're already experiencing so much shame for the behavior itself, to then layer on that you also experience some kind of violence. It's just easier to not bring it up. And I think that, takes its toll, but it makes it easier to navigate your relationships with your friends and family, is just to sweep this under the rug. Yeah.
Yeah, not even just sexual violence associated with substance use, but back when I started using, no one was really familiar with it. And I felt like telling them that I have been smoking crack was probably traumatizing enough for them. I didn't need to go into how many guns I had seen that week, or like how I'm pretty sure I was with some human traffickers the other day. Like, it was, I don't need to go into that. At the same time, there's so much weight to holding on to those things. Because I'm like, yeah, I was sexually assaulted. Yeah, someone pulled a gun on this guy. Yeah, there were video recordings. Like, terrifying things happen. And I mean, I have people I can talk to about it, which is great. But I feel like, in general, those people are few and far between. So kind of carrying all of those like traumatic things that happen again and again and again and again very often is rough. I don't like it. So therapy's good.
So it's adding like one more layer of shame to the already shameful behavior of chemsex.
Yeah.
And I guess when you're looking at recovery, or addressing both the sex and the drug part of chemsex is important, but not seen that often. Add the two together. Did you find this accessing groups and rehab, whatever you tried, that you weren't able to speak about the sexual experiences with the addictions groups, or maybe the addiction if you're with a sexual support group?
I don't know. Like, recovery circles too. I think there's also this, like, you don't want to trigger other people's own experiences with sexual violence. So you're always kind of tiptoeing around the trauma. And I find like a lot of recovery circles are like the more traditional ones, like MA or AA. There's like a lot of these men that I probably would have sought out, like these, because now they're sober, so I have no idea, but I bet you if they use it would be the exact man that I would have sound to fuck. So so it's a confusing dynamic. And like even in rehab I went to 2 different ones, and where do you even start sometimes when you've experienced that violence so often? I guess I feel like a lot of therapy itself is kind of geared around these individual experiences and how they shaped your life. But I feel like it feels unbelievable. I don't even know where to start, I guess, with that kind of stuff. What's a therapist when it's happened so frequent? Yeah, but at the same time, that might be something that has to change in therapy itself, because I think a lot of people have, we minimize these violent experiences that we have through sex. We always point to this one incident, but I think many people have many incidents, and for some reason we feel greedy or something for claiming too many things have fucked us up. Like, it can only be this one thing when many things have fucked me up. And yeah, it's just a lot of rocks you got to turn over. And I don't know if I like. I don't want to spend my whole life turning rocks over. Like I just want to keep going. So yeah, I think there's just maybe just how recovery itself is structured doesn't always quite make sense when the trauma has just been so consistent or so constant. Yeah.
I think we were explicitly told not to bring up sexual experiences in a med support group that we access online, which I think is like a huge piece of it is you need to speak about the sexual side as well, right? To heal.
And even when people get like the sluttiness aspect of your whole recovery, people get like really uncomfortable around it in traditional, like maybe even if it's a recovery circle with more queer people, like it feels like the only thing we're supposed to be talking about is the substance and not everything else that goes along with that.
I did find like I think I started off with AA because there was a queer AA by my house and they were nice to me. And I kind of ventured into NA when I realized that the alcoholics, I want to say, weren't quite on the same level as me, but I was, near death more times than not. And they all seemed to be pretty stable. I think they were sober and doing fine, which is why they were stable. I found NA, there were so many unwritten rules. Like you couldn't talk about sex, you couldn't name the substance, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. And it was very stressful. And anyway, I found a Crystal Meth Anonymous group that was really, really helpful. It was like 99% queer men, and no topic was barred. I like truly, really appreciated that group. Love those men. I no longer with them because they have a very I want to say strict like abstinence only. Like, you can't be on drugs when you're at the meetings. And I'm like, what's a drug? I don't know. Like I say I haven't used this year, which is true. But I smoke a lot of weed. I have an occasional drink, and that's kind of been what's helping me and saving me from going down a road I don't want to go down. And so it was just like, I'm like, okay, you get to drink coffee before the meeting. I can't smoke a joint before the meeting. We're both going to be totally fine. I know how it affects me. But for some reason, I'm not allowed to speak if I'm under the influence. Again, I have so much respect for those people. And like, I understand kind of where they're coming from. But yeah, the recovery rooms just weren't really my vibe. And I kind of took a step away from them very intentionally to kind of see how I was feeling about it. Because when I was in the rooms, I was constantly relapsing and feeling so shameful about it. Like every time you relapse, you have to go back up and start at day one. I'm like, I'm not doing day counts anymore. Absolutely not. But it was also so deeply religious, which, being raised in the church, there was a lot of trauma around that. So I took like a month break and felt so much better. Hadn't had cravings. Like I was just like able to process things better. I had more time because I wasn't going to a meeting every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And it was also like a really big self-empowerment piece. And again, this was for me. The groups work for some people. That's great. But there was just such this like inferiority part of being in those rooms of like, you can't do it. You need help, which, is fair. Like I do think I need help with pretty well everything, but I don't think that help is necessarily, higher power can be defined in a lot of ways that I don't think that help is God. And I just can't view it that way. So I think like focusing on empowering myself for one made me like less suicidal, less inclined to self-harm, and that's all I got.
It's funny to see them guzzling coffee and chain smoking, yet you're not allowed to use anything else. I always found the most important thing was, or the thing I enjoyed the most was the slogans. They keep coming back and let go and let God. I don't know. I find them kind of funny.
But I like the one day at a time, I guess. But again, like I find the traditional recovery groups themselves are just like this very straight idea that time exists as only like this linear concept, and like it really neglects, I think, the reality of time, or like how a lot of queer people experience time of it, not being such a linear experience and as kind of existing at all places at once, kind of, and it feels, like that traditional model kind of neglects. I guess you're really trying to force yourself sometimes even into experiencing even the concept of time into a room that you just don't fit into. But
And I think, like you had said, the people around you, people in the group, your connection to them was the most valuable.
Yeah, I'd say I think that was most of what kept me coming back, was just the people, and also I didn't know what else to do. Like this is the only option. So, and these people it works for, but also these people are telling me to drop out of therapy and pray to Jesus. So like, what's helpful here? But yeah, no, I still talk to, like, I haven't been to even a CMA meeting since January, but I still talk to some of those folks, and they've been like also stepped away from the group because they're like, I keep relapsing. It's not working for me. But lovely people, and lovely to have that kind of community. I think has been super important to me. Just having like folks to talk to. I don't want them to give me advice because I will not do it. Even if it's helpful, I'll probably do the opposite. But mostly just folks to talk to kind of take some of that burden off of like keeping everything to yourself, of like all of the ridiculous, intense, scary things that happen or that can happen with substance use and sex.
I think, there was a chemsex group, and I think that was like the first time I really heard people be so candid about what they experience with chemsex, and I guess approach it with some humor too was really helpful, because it is, I don't know, it seemed like before the only way to talk about chemsex was when you were engaging in chemsex, like because that was like the only room that existed for it. So yeah, I guess there's just not really many rooms that exist to talk about chemsex even when you're sober. And I guess fundamentally, like, that is what recovery support provides, is just a space to talk about your experiences. It's just hard to find a space that allows room to talk about this experience that I think we say is unique, but I don't even know, I don't think it's as unique as maybe we think it is. It seems that a lot of queer people have a relationship with addiction, and then a real complicated relationship with sex, and like, how can those not intersect? And
there's a power in sharing it with each other, I think, too. So looking back on your own experiences, what advice might you give someone who's just starting to explore chemsex?
I guess if you have already a healthy relationship with sex itself, then it probably, I'm sure there is a way to do it in a healthy way. But I think just like that intersection of sex and shame, and introducing chems themselves into that mix, it's like, it is dangerous, because if you're entering chemsex when you already have such an unhealthy relationship to sex itself, then it's a slippery slope. But I guess the advice would be, if your first experience with chemsex is scary or something bad happens, then don't be ashamed to talk about what happened just because you were on chems. Simple advice.
I guess my advice would be similar to Steven's. There's a lot of shame around it, or there can be a lot of shame around it. And it's going to be unique to the individual always, I feel. But I found what was helpful for me was not shame. I think it's like parts work therapy or something. It's just like examining parts of yourself, seeing them as valid, not seeing them as good or bad, but trying to understand how they work, understand why you're doing these things. Oftentimes for me, it was at least some form of coping mechanism that wasn't really targeting what it needed to target. Like, you're taking Pepto-Bismol when you have, I don't know, leukemia. Like, it doesn't really work. But yeah, I think having so much shame just around it naturally, which is gonna happen, wasn't helpful. Because the more I wanted to repress those urges, those feelings, the less I wanted to think about them. And like, the less I understood about it. So the more I kind of accepted, like, okay, I'm having a craving. Let's think about it, not in a bad way. Why, like, what's going on in my life? Is there another way to cope that could be better? Like, more targeted towards what's actually going wrong so that I can fix this issue instead of creating new ones. But yeah, I think just speaking to myself kindly and without perpetuating that shame, it was really helpful for me. So yeah, don't be ashamed. Just don't.
Using it as a crutch as when it kind of can escalate, perhaps more so. And it's a coping mechanism. But when it's more for pleasure, maybe some people can have a healthier relationship with it. So I guess what would be your ultimate like harm reduction toolkit or support for chemsex, even if it doesn't exist?
Yeah, like I wish I could just say I'm not just an addict, like I am a chemsex addict. Like I don't know, like chemsex, it informs me, and then it like informs all my relationships going forward now. And I feel more comfortable revealing that I had an addiction, but I don't feel comfortable, like even to family and friends, revealing just how deeply connected it was to chemsex, the addiction. And yeah, it would just like, it's a concept that just doesn't really exist outside of, would look to the public. I don't think they would know what the fuck I even meant when I said chemsex. So, you know, I guess I can envision all these resources that would be helpful, but what would be ultimately helpful is just if there was some public knowledge, even of what it was, and that it's not some, you know, perverted experience, I guess, because I think that is also kind of the shame you're dealing with whenever you reveal. Yeah, I think also it just like it plays into a lot of stigma of like you're dirty or something, you know. But it's also just a difficult thing to reveal the amount of sexual partners that you've had related to chemsex. But yeah, I think just knowing that there was like a place to go to locally, or just a room that I guess was just more informed or more educated on what chemsex really is, would be helpful. Like, yeah, it's hard to envision this, perfect chemsex scenario when we really just don't even have the basics yet of how to address it. So, if I had even brought up chemsex in a rehab facility, I don't think like these are addiction specialists, and I don't think they would know what the fuck I was talking about at all. And I think it's just because so much of recovery itself is catered to straight individuals. And yeah, when it's already so difficult to bring up in recovery circles, then it makes it like, you know, when that rejection exists in addiction spaces, then it's hard to imagine that it would be accepted in non-addiction spaces, you know? Yeah, like I feel like even if at work, if I revealed, oh, I'm a chemsex recovery, like it would have serious professional repercussions for me. And that's like, it sucks having to kind of hide things just out of those kind of fears, not because you're personally ashamed, but because it would have consequences. So yeah, I guess the ideal would just be pretty simple, in that it'd be nice if the public was aware of what chemsex was, and then we could build something from that. But I don't know what that would look like.
That's funny. At my the rehab I went to, there were two straight males who were super knowledgeable about it because they'd participated many times. Yeah, it was interesting, and not the experience I would have expected either. But at the end, an anomaly of sorts. James, what about you? What would be the ultimate support?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel similarly to Stephen of like, what the fuck did that even look like? But I think there's an aspect of community support that's super important. And then there's also so much that's going to be unique to the individual. So I think for me anyway, things that were helpful was like a combination of the support of my peers and therapy. There was a saying that I liked but didn't like agree with in either NA or A or whatever. And the saying was, "We'll love you until you learn to love yourself." And never felt really that love from those rooms, but absolutely felt that love from my friend. Yeah, it was really like a supportive community, so I didn't feel like I was alone. And then someone to work through what issues specifically were affecting me. I know a few people in recovery who like have romantic partners who support them, and that's like fantastic. I'm single. I like have a lovely supportive friendship network and lovely community of people. Just like at work the other day, my boss, their partner was coming in to help move some things around the office, and I was like a little hurt of like, I don't have a partner to help me and move things around the office. And then one of my friends from another local organization was just like, "Hey, I heard you guys need some help. Can I come over?" And I'm like, I don't need a husband. I have friends. But like the support sexually that you would get from having a partner going through recovery, going through substance use, like having someone who's there to like work with you on those intimacy issues without having to like seek a random stranger on Grindr and being like, "Hey, let's talk about substance use." Like, no, that's not going to happen. Yeah. So I'm a little jealous of people with partners.
I actually turned one friend away, I remember, by being open about that stuff and like asking to, try different things, take it slow sexually. Stopped talking to me completely. So,
Do you want that yet, do you think? Like, do you want a healthy relationship sexually with a partner?
oh, absolutely. But then it's hard to like recreate some of the excitement that chemsex does provide, I guess.
I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know if I actually want. I know I can say that right now and pretend that's what I want. I just don't think I'm quite there yet. I guess my fear is entering into a healthy, intimate sexual relationship with a partner, and it'll just immediately make me crave the alternative. Yeah. So, I mean, I know that's ultimately my goal. I just still don't think I'm there yet. And it's just annoying because when will I be there? And I think it really just takes time. And I went into therapy really for the abuse stuff. And I think just maybe the last few months, I finally, like I told that my therapist, that's why I'm there the first time I ever went. And like right now is, or like the last few months is the first time I really ever talked about it officially. Like we've always flirted around it, but yeah, I don't know. With the whole healthy partner thing, it's something I like to tell people or even tell myself, but I have no idea if it's true. Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I like truly am only looking for sex right now because my therapist told me to. That's not true. My sex drive is getting out of control and it's frustrating and it's like causing cravings to get worse. And so I'm like, I need an outlet, but I don't want a partner right now, at least. In the future, I don't know. And like, world could end tomorrow. Just looking for sex was not with my therapist. Sex for my therapist right now.
It takes a long time to like regain those feelings. And Stephen, what about you? What would be the ultimate support?
I feel like that just has to be an abandonment eventually of these really like outdated ideas around enabling and like tough love. They don't work. The person just ends up more alone. And I feel like when that approach had ever been taken with family or friends, it just drove me to find more connection with chemsex. It really had. I'm giving them a lot of grace because I think they deserve it, but because nobody's really educated on how to properly address addiction. So when I look back, I hate all the finger pointing that goes on in active use because really the family members don't know how to address it. You don't know how to address it. And fundamentally, it's, you're pointing fingers at each other when really you should just be pointing fingers at the systems that in place that really just give nobody the tools for how to cope with these kind of things. So yeah, again, it's difficult for me to really imagine what chemsex recovery spaces would look like when, even the traditional ones, I think, are just so misguided. Yeah, when they're getting it so wrong, I think, in those spaces still. Yeah, we try and assimilate into these other spaces, or, we try and mirror these kind of traditional spaces, but maybe it doesn't have to be that at all. It could be something completely different.
Yeah, a lot of misinformation and misguided policies and programs that don't work well, maybe. Yeah, thank you both for your time, sharing your experiences. It's been a unique episode, and we're signing off.
Thank you.
Attention all passengers, Captain Patrice speaking. Prepare for landing. We're making our final descent on our YHZ Resilience flight. Next up, our journey continues aboard the YHZ Maturity flight. Halifax host Andrew introduces experienced flyers Harry and Hector for a two-part conversation exploring PNP and aging, desire, and connection between generations in the context of chemsex. More compelling stories await. Subscribe to stay updated. If you've encountered turbulence while listening to this podcast, please refer to our list of resources and services related to PNP chemsex in the episode description and on chemstories.ca.